don't think he's that. Even when I sparred him, he's just like, he's just kind of a one-trick pony, one hard punch, tries to fucking dry hump you, gets tired, He's a real soft man. But, let's be honest, you guys.
You're not worried about his stand-up, are you? But more of the ground.
I mean, dude, here's the thing about 4-ounce gloves. When you're throwing those little fuckers, dude, anything could happen. It just how shit goes. So to say, oh, I'm not afraid to stand up, you're throwing a haymaker that touches you, it's going to suck. I'm not worried about everything. I'm worried about wrestling. I'm worried about stand-up. I'm worried about knees. I'm worried about fucking everything. But I truly believe I'm better than him, without a doubt. Cannot say how confidently I am. From everything I know of him, from all my experience with him, in the ring, out of the ring, I think he's a weak man, and I think I'm better than him.
Khamzat Chimaev is a dangerous man inside the octagon, and he's a dangerous man outside of the octagon. He's not someone that you would want to trifle with, okay? He's a bunch of Chechens. I see him all the time down at the Santos studios. They're very serious players. I also heard that the Chechen guys were running around Las Vegas looking for Sean Strickland, right? Wanting to bloody kill him. Okay, Sean might need to get some security. He's like, no, I don't care. I've got guns.
Sean Strickland looked into the eyes of the most feared man in the UFC and didn't see a god. He saw a man who could be broken. Behind closed doors, away from the cameras and the hype, these two finally crossed paths in a training session that changed everything. Sean didn't just survive the encounter, he left with a blueprint on how to dismantle the unstoppable force known as Khamzat Chimaev. It wasn't the legendary dominance everyone expected. Instead, it was a reveal of the flaws that the UFC has been desperately trying to hide from the public for years. This was the moment the myth of the invincible Chechen began to crumble in real time.
As a promoter on the promotional side, I would do everything I could to keep these guys away from one another, and especially keep their camps away from one another, because that's something people forget. These guys never roll by themselves, to Sean Strickland's point. This guy's going to have a lot of people.
Everyone talks about Khamzat as if he is some mythical beast from the mountains who cannot be touched, but Strickland is the first high-level fighter to pull back the curtain and call it like it is. He describes Chimaev as a one-trick pony with a single hard punch and a wrestling style that relies entirely on an initial explosion. If you survive that first wave, the monster starts to look very human. Sean claims that while the power is undeniable, it is far from unstoppable. It is a calculated burst of violence that has a very clear expiration date if you have the chin to endure it and the heart to push back.
I'm not Muslim. If I was a Muslim fan listening to this and hearing him speak, he's calling them, some crazy thing, and he's talking about prayer towels and stuff, I would feel some sort of way. So is the biggest issue Khamzat, or is it someone coming up to Sean as well? You're inciting a lot of harsh feelings in people by saying these things.
The wrestling of Chimaev is usually the stuff of nightmares, but Strickland has a different take on it. He admits the guy is a better wrestler on paper, but he calls the actual experience a dry hump session that eventually leads to exhaustion. According to Sean, Khamzat burns through his gas tank trying to prove a point rather than trying to finish the fight. When that initial surge fails, the frustration sets in, and that is when the supposed killer starts to look soft. It is a shocking perspective from a man who has actually felt the weight of those world-class takedowns and lived to tell the tale.
Sean Strickland mouthing off. You're going to have Chimaev retaliating. He's going to instigate Chimaev. Chimaev is going to react. Chimaev is going to get violent. Chimaev is going to... The press conference is going to start trouble. I mean, it's going to be such an entertaining pre-fight setup that I think Sean may jump the line.
Sean is not just questioning the technique, he is questioning the man's entire soul. He openly labels Chimaev a weak man, claiming that beneath the aggressive exterior lies someone who gets frustrated when things do not go his way. In the gym, where there are no judges or screaming fans, the truth comes out. Sean believes that if they kickbox for 5 rounds, Khamzat will simply tag out or lose his mind trying to land a haymaker. The aura of invincibility is a marketing tool, but in a real dogfight, Sean is convinced that the Chechen star would be the first one to look for a way out of the cage.
Nowhere else in the sporting world do you hear headlines like this, by the way. Nowhere else. You're not hearing anything like this in the NBA or the NFL. Sean Strickland says he'll shoot Khamzat Chimaev if he tries to jump him.
Yeah, it's a little strong. I gotta tell you, it's a little strong. And you wanna know why?
But this rivalry has spilled far beyond the mats of a training center. There are whispers of a much darker reality surrounding this matchup. Chimaev does not travel alone. He moves with a serious entourage of Chechen loyalists who view any sign of disrespect as a declaration of war. Reports surfaced that these men were actually roaming the streets of Las Vegas, looking for Sean Strickland to handle things outside of the sanctioned rules of the sport. This is not just fight hype anymore. It has transitioned into a legitimate safety concern that has even the most seasoned UFC officials looking over their shoulders.
Because we know that Sean carries a gun. And we also know that Chimaev is known to travel in a pack. And we also know that Sean loves to build and promote a fight, and Chimaev isn't afraid to do his end of it. Like, my point is...
When Sean heard that a crew of angry men was hunting him down, his response was predictably unfiltered and dangerous. He did not call for more security or go into hiding. Instead, he reminded everyone that he lives by a different code, one involving the Second Amendment. He openly stated that he does not care about their numbers because he has a firearm and is not afraid to use it. This is a terrifying escalation that most sports leagues would shut down immediately. In the UFC, it becomes a headline, but the underlying threat of real-world violence is chillingly authentic for those involved.
It's dumb, and like it, especially at a time when like one of our big problems in America is gun violence, and you have a guy out here being like, "I'm so mad, I'm going to shoot him," and people are expected to like sit around and be like, "Awesome, that's a great headline. Let's go with that."
The promotional side of this fight is a total nightmare for Dana White and his team. Usually they want fighters to hate each other because it sells pay-per-views, but this is hitting a point of no return. You are dealing with two of the most unpredictable personalities in combat sports history. One is a man who brandishes weapons and speaks his mind without a filter, and the other is a force of nature from a culture where honor is worth more than life itself. The tension is a powder keg, and any small spark at a press conference could lead to a massive riot that the UFC security teams simply cannot stop.
This being the way you build a fight, this being how you build the most successful fights in UFC history, is by crossing these lines, is by going to this extreme, is by making you believe, whether it's true or not, and in the cases that you mentioned, I do believe it was true, whether these guys hate each other, and if they saw each other on the street, that they would rip each other's fucking heads off, or if they saw each other on the street, that Sean Strickland would be compelled.
The cultural divide here is where things get truly perilous. Sean has made comments about prayer towels and religious practices that have deeply offended not just Chimaev, but his entire community. For a man like Khamzat, this is not about a belt or a ranking anymore. It is about defending his faith and his people from what he perceives as a direct insult. When the fight becomes a crusade, the level of violence shifts. We have seen this before with McGregor and Khabib, and we all remember how that ended in a cage-jumping brawl that scarred the reputation of the entire sport for years.
So guys, I generally don't post my location or my whereabouts. I don't really drop pins where I'm at. I just don't like it. But I was on Instagram, some stupid shit popped up in my feed about like Chimaev saying you try to fight me or kill me in the streets. Dude, I was like 10 minutes from your gym. I was dropping tags and locations all day on my Instagram. Your homies that train with you follow me.
Imagine the pressure on the officials trying to manage the logistics for UFC 328. They are reportedly booking these fighters in separate hotels on opposite sides of the city just to prevent a chance encounter in a lobby. They have to manage entire ecosystems of people, not just the athletes. Strickland travels with his own circle of loyalists, and Chimaev has a pack that views him as a king. The danger is that the goons or the entourage members might take matters into their own hands before the fighters even make it to the scale. One wrong look in a hallway could end a multi-million-dollar event. Imagine the pressure on the officials trying to manage the logistics for UFC 328. They are reportedly booking these fighters in separate hotels on opposite sides of the city just to prevent a chance encounter in a lobby. They have to manage entire ecosystems of people, not just the athletes. Strickland travels with his own circle of loyalists, and Chimaev has a pack that views him as a king. The danger is that the goons or the entourage members might take matters into their own hands before the fighters even make it to the scale. One wrong look in a hallway could end a multi-million-dollar event. Imagine the pressure on the officials trying to manage the logistics for UFC 328. They are reportedly booking these fighters in separate hotels on opposite sides of the city just to prevent a chance encounter in a lobby. They have to manage entire ecosystems of people, not just the athletes. Strickland travels with his own circle of loyalists, and Chimaev has a pack that views him as a king. The danger is that the goons or the entourage members might take matters into their own hands before the fighters even make it to the scale. One wrong look in a hallway could end a multi-million-dollar event. There is a disturbing trend in the headlines where firearms and street violence are becoming normalized parts of the fight buildup. In any other sport, a player threatening to shoot an opponent would be banned for life. In the UFC, fans are expected to just sit back and find it entertaining. This speaks to the raw and unfiltered nature of the sport, but it also highlights a serious moral vacuum. The commentator mentioned that it takes the playfulness out of the rivalry. It is no longer a game of trash talk. It is a grim declaration of intent that leaves everyone feeling a little uneasy about the outcome. Sean's critique of Khamzat's fighting style is grounded in his belief that the Chechen relies too much on fear. He argues that once you show Chimaev that you are not intimidated, his entire game plan falls apart. He calls him a real soft man when the going gets tough, suggesting that the legendary aggression is just a mask for insecurity. If Sean can drag him into deep water in the 4th and 5th rounds, he believes the world will see a total collapse. It is a bold claim against a man who has barely been touched in most of his professional fights, but Sean speaks with a terrifying confidence. The 4-ounce gloves change everything, and Sean is the first to admit it. He knows that despite his criticisms, one mistake against a man with Chimaev's power can end your night in a second. He says he is worried about everything, the wrestling, the knees, the haymakers, but he still believes he is the better man. It is a rare moment of honesty from a fighter who usually acts like he is invincible. He acknowledges the danger, but refuses to let it dictate his actions. This balance of fear and defiance is what makes the matchup so compelling and so incredibly volatile for the promoters. The mention of New Jersey as a backdrop for this fight adds another layer of complexity. With a significant Muslim community in the area, Sean's inflammatory comments about religion could incite more than just a fight in the cage. The atmosphere at the arena is expected to be incredibly hostile, with fans taking sides based on cultural and religious lines. This is the kind of environment that can turn a sporting event into a riot. The UFC is essentially walking into a minefield, hoping that their security can contain the raw emotion that has been building up for months on social media. We have to ask if this is all a calculated move by Strickland. Is he the maestro of mayhem, knowing exactly which buttons to push to maximize his payout? Or is he a man who genuinely does not care about the consequences? By attacking Chimaev's heritage and faith, he has ensured that this will be the most watched fight of his career, but he has also ensured that he will never be safe in certain parts of the world again. It is a trade-off that most people would never make, but Sean thrives in the chaos. He seems to enjoy the fact that he has become a target for an entire nation. Khamzat's reaction to all this has been a simmering rage. He is not a man of many words, but when he speaks of a war for generations, people listen. This is a threat that extends far beyond a single fight. It implies a blood feud that could follow both men for the rest of their lives. In the world of Chechen honor, an insult is not forgotten when the referee raises a hand. This is the chilling reality that the UFC has to manage. They are promoting a fight, but they might be facilitating a lifelong conflict that results in real-world tragedy long after both men have retired. The absurdity reached a boiling point when pundits suggested that fighters might need to be frisked for weapons at the weigh-ins. This is where the sport stands today. We are talking about elite athletes being treated like criminals because the rhetoric has become so violent. It is a dark commentary on the state of combat sports and the lengths people will go to for a headline. The fact that this is even a serious conversation shows how much the line between promotion and reality has blurred. The UFC is pushing the boundaries of what is acceptable, and we are all watching to see if they break. Sean's plan for the fight itself is surprisingly simple. He wants to survive the initial wrestling onslaught, and then turn the match into a 5-round kickboxing war. He believes that if he can keep the fight standing, Chimaev will become frustrated and start throwing wild, desperate punches. That is when Sean plans to tag him out and expose the lack of technical depth in his game. It is a high-risk strategy that requires perfect execution and a granite chin. If he is right, he will become a legend. If he is wrong, he will become just another highlight on Khamzat's path to the title. The role of the entourage cannot be overstated in this drama. When these guys move, they move in packs. This creates a situation where a simple disagreement between two fighters can turn into a brawl between 20 people. The UFC has had to hire extra security teams specifically trained in crowd control just to keep the peace during fight week. They are trying to prevent a repeat of the chaos we saw in the past, but with personalities like these, it only takes one person to throw a bottle or a punch to set off a chain reaction that ruins everything. The role of the entourage cannot be overstated in this drama. When these guys move, they move in packs. This creates a situation where a simple disagreement between two fighters can turn into a brawl between 20 people. The UFC has had to hire extra security teams, specifically trained in crowd control, just to keep the peace during fight week. They are trying to prevent a repeat of the chaos we saw in the past, but with personalities like these, it only takes one person to throw a bottle or a punch to set off a chain reaction that ruins everything. Strickland has exposed more than just Chimaev's power. He has exposed the fragility of the entire promotional machine. He has shown that a single fighter with a loud mouth and a lack of fear can derail the carefully crafted narrative of an invincible superstar. Whether he wins or loses in the cage, he has already succeeded in humanizing a man that the world viewed as a monster. He has pulled back the curtain and showed us the flaws, the fatigue, and the frustration that exists within every fighter, no matter how much hype they have behind them. In the end, this is a fight that transcends the sport of MMA. It is a clash of civilizations, a test of personal codes, and a high-stakes gamble with human lives. The UFC is betting that they can contain the explosion just long enough to collect the revenue. But when the cage door closes and the security guards step back, it will just be two men and their deep-seated hatred. The world will be watching to see if the unstoppable power of Chimaev is real, or if Sean Strickland was right all along about the man behind the myth. One thing is certain, nothing will ever be the same after this.